Hi, this is Polyboy, and I'm going to be talking about the concept of power and the idea of the wealth gap in black communities as opposed to white communities. The mistake I see a lot of black people make is that my people always think, when they think of power, they think of it in the terms of somebody giving them power. Now, this is not always a bad way to look at power. This is not always a bad way to get power, so to speak. But if you can get power that way, then you can also lose power that way, because any power you do not create of your own, or you don't get of yourself, can be given away to someone else, or can be taken away from you. And that is a concept that many of these so-called black black teachers, black representatives, black champions don't talk about. They talk about how the black man is oppressed, how the black man is getting is getting ruined by the community by systemic racism, which is a concept that we talk about later. How a black man is getting just downgraded, pushed down, abused by the system, but they never seem to tell them how they can get power, which is kind of weird and kind of suspect to me. Because if you want to talk about the disease all day and you don't talk about the cure, that is a little bit weird and suspect to me, right? And that also develops a sense of wrongful entitlement to make you think that somehow people owe you something. Now, that doesn't mean that the system doesn't owe black people something. This doesn't necessarily mean that the system doesn't owe them quote-unquote reparations. But if you're going to rely on that, then you're never going to be powerful. You're never going to have your full potential met. Because no society whatsoever, survived or thrived because they were given, reparations, or given even the people that have suffered from massive losses. I mean, till this day, the Chinese people haven't given reparations to the Japanese haven't given reparations to the Chinese people. Yet China has become one of the biggest world powers. Reparations doesn't make you powerful. What you do with what you have makes you powerful. There was this YouTuber I was looking into recently. I think his name is the name of his channel, I don't remember his name. The name of his channel is called History Debunked, and he talks about instances in history that has been misread for convenience or for political reasons, right? And he said one of his videos, I will try to find it and link to it in the bottom or in the description. One of his videos, it was talking about the idea of how black people and some white people always have this idea that somehow they have to be discovered, that they have potential and they just have to be discovered, and that's all they have to be discovered, and then everything is sorted, then they can become shining stars on the global stage. And it was like, that is not a very effective way to get what you want, because if you want to get what you want, you have to market yourself. You have to make yourself marketable. You have to go out there and struggle to get your idea out there. That's how you know that you really want something. The world doesn't owe you something just because you think it owes you something. And I really agree with that. There's some other things it says that I don't really agree with, but I really, really agree with that. And I always say this: if you don't want to listen to facts and evidence, and you don't want to expose problems in your society, somebody will do it for you, whether you're white or you're black. And the person that might do it for you might not be the person you like. So, that being said, I very much agree with his sentiment. The idea that somehow you can just wait there and power will come to you, or you can ask for power by protesting, is why black people are where they are, for the most part. I mean, let's think about it, right? India is a third world country like Africa, and even Africa is trying, but Indians have invented a lot of things. Indians have nuclear warheads. They are a sovereign country of their own, and yet they have a very big population, right? They have many areas in their region that is urbanized. They have a lot of scientists, but yet they're doing much better than some African countries. And even African countries and Africans themselves are doing much better. They're working much harder, maybe not smarter, because that's a topic for another day, than many Black Americans. And this is also a very, very peculiar thing I've noticed, right? A lot of Africans don't die in conditions that are very unbearable, mostly because they have very corrupt governments, right? Like governments are much more in your face corrupt, right? Like corrupt in your face compared to that of Americans and the Western world. The Western world could be more dangerous in terms of the power that they wield, but at least they are much more careful how they broadcast their stupidity, so to speak. African leaders in Africa, with some exceptions, African leaders are much less. They don't really give a fuck, if you want to put it that way. You know, there was one incident when one Nigerian, because I'm a Nigerian person, when one Nigerian official was like, the billions of dollars that were stolen was eaten by a snake. That shows you the level of corruption and the level of just in your face corruption that exists in these African countries. But yet, there's a lot of Nigerians doing their bit. There's a lot of Nigerians succeeding. And even their mental state is much better than a lot of Black Americans, right? And the reason for that is because they are not living with certain... The only reason why they have this idea of Black oppression is because they listen to Black media. They listen to Black American media that has been pushed by white liberals. For the most part, that's the reason why they have this Black mentality of Black oppression. But when you look at their lives, they don't really bother themselves of that, and they succeed in a lot of ways. And that's not because there's no level of Black oppression whatsoever in the West. There is that to some extent, but for the most part, it's not that way. In fact, most of the oppression I've seen comes from Black people towards white people. That is obvious. Now we can talk about the police brutality against Black people, but that's a story for another day. But what I'm trying to say in effect is this. There's a lot of factors that hinge you down, but what you don't put as a priority in your life does not affect you. And I will give an example. For instance, most people don't know that the Arabian slave trade was much more dangerous and detrimental towards Black people, right, than the transatlantic slave trade. They don't know that because they don't know that, they don't get walked over that. They don't get bogged down by that in their psyche. That is not really a problem for them because they don't know too much about the Arabian slave trade. They don't understand the Arabian slave trade was at least twice more proficient than the transatlantic slave trade. They don't know that. And because they don't know that, it doesn't bother them. So it doesn't affect their psyche. They're not marching all around talking about how to free slaves from Arabian countries because they're still slaves in Arabian countries that are Black, which is not the case when it comes to, European countries for the most part. I couldn't see any sources that really was legitimate that said there were Black slaves in Western countries. But yet, Black people have been led to think that this is the most important thing that they have to focus on all day, every day. Now, that being said, let's talk about what Black people can focus on to give them power. Because now I've already talked about what they shouldn't be doing in case they were to have power. They shouldn't be asking for power from the white man. That is begging. They shouldn't be doing that. They shouldn't be asking for power because of equal representation or whatever, because that doesn't give you power. That might give you power in the short run, but the person that gives you that power again can take it away from you if the tables turn. So how do you secure such power for yourself? Well, it's simple. Look at what the West does. Look at what Asians do. They invent things. That's one of the things that they do. They create things that people need, that people cannot do without. And so people are always going to buy stuff from them. People are always going to be dependent on them. The people you depend on are the ones that have power over you. Like, for instance, most of us cannot do without our apps. Most of us cannot do without YouTube. Most of us cannot do without all these applications that we use on a daily basis. So we depend on this technology. And that means this technology The people that made this technology have power over us to some extent. And so if they want demands, you have to give them what they want. I know it's kind of sad, but that's what I call economical power. You should be focusing on things like the sciences, like inventions, like how to create things, like how to make things that will benefit the world. And when you focus on these things and you push out and you go out there to actively, search for how to bring them to the world, that's how you get power. You don't get power by asking people to give you power. White people literally dug up sand, silicon dioxide, and they transferred that into computers. Think about that. By making metallurgical silicon and by doping it with phosphorus, they could make semiconductors. That is insane. And yet we are not seeing our own potential. We are seeing the situation as if we have to depend on the white man to get our problems sorted out. That is a terrible way of looking at the world. And that's why I keep saying, listen, do your own research. You have to do your own research. If not, you get a wrong view that somehow the way to get power is by asking for it. And then you will be forever limited. That's why I'm going to stop today, because I think it's already becoming too long. And I think you have to do your own research, right? But if you like what I've been saying, support me by subscribing, turn on notifications, all those good stuff, And if you like my music, you can go ahead and check it out in the description below. Thank you.